Hey guys, okay, we're going to go over carbohydrates and lipids today. So remember to make sure you're filling out your notes and your guided questions as we go through. Okay, so we're going to talk about macromolecules. What does the term macro mean? It means large, very big. So what are they? They are very large molecules that make most of the structures of the body. They're made of smaller pieces called monomers that can be assembled like Legos to form a variety of structures. A long chain of monomers is called a polymer. So mono meaning one and poly meaning many. And those two prefixes will come through this a lot. So we're going to start with carbohydrates. So we have different forms of carbohydrates, and you can find them in a variety of foods, such as breads, fruits, vegetables, and you can also find them in your candies and your soda. So what is a carbohydrate? The monomer, or the smallest unit of a carbohydrate, is called a monosaccharide. Saccharide means sugar, so in a monosaccharide would be one sugar. But the polymer, or the long chain, is called a polysaccharide because it is made up of many sugars, and that would be an example of starch. The structure of a carbohydrate are rings of carbon with oxygen and hydrogen attached. So we have CH2O. The uses are energy and plant structure. Carbohydrates are short-term energy. It's that quick burst of energy you get from eating something sweet. And then we also have our plant structures. The examples are sucrose and cellulose. Sucrose would be like table sugar, and cellulose is what you'll find in the roughage, the lettuce and the corn, all of those fruits and vegetables that you eat. So again, some examples of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates include simple sugars, which are your small sugar molecules in soft drinks and candies. And then you have your complex carbohydrates, the long starch molecules in pastas and potatoes. The complex carbohydrates are the ones that are more beneficial. They're the ones that give you the, more energy than the short-term sugars. So monosaccharides, made of one sugar. Glucose is a monosaccharide. One sugar is found in sports drinks. Fructose is found in fruits. Honey contains both glucose and fructose. And then we have galactose, which is a milk sugar. So anything that ends in the term OSE means sugar. So glucose, fructose, galactose are all sugar molecules, and they're monosaccharides. They're made up of one sugar. So what does the suffix OSE mean? Well, it means sugar. And then where are glucose molecules found? Well, they're found in sodas, candies, and any sweet snacks. And then where would you find fructose? We would find fructose in fruit. So these are examples of carbohydrates. Here we have one sugar. This is a monosaccharide. Here we have two sugars. This is called a disaccharide, di for two. Here we have a polysaccharide, poly for many, and you can see we have 1, 2, 3 sugar molecules. So disaccharide, you can see the two sugar molecules that we have. Here's glucose, here's fructose. So di means two, so disaccharide is a double sugar. They are made up of by joining two monosaccharides. So individually, we would call this one just a monosaccharide and this monosaccharide, but since they are linked together, it is now a disaccharide because there are two of them. Involves removing a water molecule called condensation. So in order to get them together, we remove a water molecule, and that's condensation. So common disaccharides include sucrose, which is table sugar. Remember, it ends in the word OSE, so therefore it's a sugar. Lactose, which is milk sugar. And maltose, which is grain sugar. So here you can see our disaccharides. Again, one sugar, two sugars. One monosaccharide, two monosaccharides makes a disaccharide. But then we have our polysaccharides. Polysaccharides, poly meaning many, saccharides sugar, so we have many sugars. Here's a long chain of monosaccharides that make a polysaccharide. So it's complex carbohydrates. These are the ones that are more beneficial. Composed of many sugar molecules linked together. So again, 1 monosaccharide, 2 monosaccharides, 3 monosaccharides, 4 and 5. But since they're linked together, we call it a polysaccharide. Polymers of monosaccharide change. Poly meaning many, so there are many monosaccharides combined together. So examples of polysaccharides, we have glucose, potatoes, we have starches, so here's our starch, we have glycogen, and then we have cellulose. Glycogen is what we burn for energy. Cellulose is plant structures that we cannot digest, which is the reason why you see corn later. So questions. What does the prefix poly mean and mono? Poly means many, mono means one. Polymers of monosaccharide chains means what? Many sugar molecules linked together. So now let's go into lipids. Lipids are fats. Fat is used for long-term energy storage, for warmth, insulation, and also protection of your vital organs. So lipids, the single unit or the monomer of a lipid is a fatty acid. The polymer of a lipid, which is lipid or fat, the structure are 3 long chains of carbon, hydrogen, and a glycerol molecule. So again, the uses of lipids are energy, structure, and warmth. Examples are fats, oils, and cholesterols. So again, the function of lipids. Fat storage stores energy. This is our long-term energy storage. Helps to insulate the body. So if we think about the polar bear and the walrus, they live in the Arctic, so therefore they need that insulation. Cushion and protection. We have to have a thin layer of fat to protect our vital organs, and it also makes up the cell membrane of every cell in your body, or in every living thing on Earth has a thin layer around each cell that protects it, and that's made of fat. It's a lipid bilayer. So again, think of your polar bear for fat stores energy, helps insulate the body, and cushions and protects the organs. So lipids are molecules that consist of long hydrocarbon chains. Attaching the 3 chains together is usually a glycerol molecule. Lipids are nonpolar, which means they don't want to mix with water. Here is an example of a lipid molecule. We have our glycerol head and our fatty acid chains. So lipids and cell membranes. Cell membranes are made up of lipids called phospholipids. Phospholipids have a head that is polar and attract water. They are hydrophilic, meaning they love water. The tails, on the other hand, are fatty acid, and they are nonpolar. They are hydrophobic. They do not like water. So again, lipids are hydrophobic or water-fearing, which is why we can't mix oil and water. So they do not mix with water. Includes fats, waxes, steroids, and oils. This is an example of an individual fat molecule. So here's our cell membrane. Your cell membrane is made up of 2 layers. Here's one layer, here's another layer. The heads, which are the yellow ends, are hydrophilic, which means they are near the water. The tails are hydrophobic, which means they do not like water, so they are found on the inside. And this thin layer will surround every living cell on Earth. So fats and organisms. Most animal fats have a high proportion of saturated fatty acid and exist as solids at room temperature. Butter, margarine, shortening, and are called saturated fats. These are the bad fats. So saturated fat are solid at room temperature, and they're unhealthy for you. And then we have our plant fats. Most plant oils tend to be low in saturated fatty acids and exist as liquids at room temperature, and they are unsaturated. So olive oil, vegetable oil, sunflower oil, all of those types of oils are good for you. So here's examples of lipids. We have our saturated and our unsaturated. Saturated, unsaturated. So remember, to take the quiz on Edmeadow, you need to log in and complete the short quiz once you have completed the web quest. Make sure you complete your handout for the notes and glue them in your notebook.